So we are here with
Fred Armitage
from
and his famous toilets. It's John Gallagher from the band Raven. Thank you.
yes, coming all the way from,
Ashburn, Virginia. How about that?
and before that,
Oh, that'll go on too long. Let's just go from where I started. Newcastle upon Tyne, England.
now we're talking.
England, my England.
When you started Raven, it took you a few years to get a record deal. What were those years like?
They were very similar to other years that had been around in the world at the time. We learned our trade. We weren't ready to get a record deal. We learned how to play. We learned how to play to an audience, play to an audience that wasn't interested, how to kick them up the ass and get them interested. And if they actively hated you, feed that anger and feed that hatred. And we watched very many accomplished practitioners of that art. The first bands we ever saw was Alex Harvey Band and Slade. And you couldn't have a better education than watching both those bands, who were just unbelievable. And we were very lucky in Newcastle. They had a relatively small hall and every band of any note came there. So you could actually see them pretty close up and see what was going on. Because there was no instructional videos or DVDs or any of that back in the dark old ages, you know. So we learned from seeing real bands up close.
How long did it take you to develop your own style?
It really changed. I mean, we kind of had our own thing going, but when we went from a 4-piece to a 3-piece, when we got rid of the guy that we'd got in to replace our original other guitar player, Paul Bowden, and it didn't work out, and we went as a 3-piece, and that's a whole different ball game, because there's no passengers in a 3-piece band. Everyone has to contribute equally. But it's the strongest shape. It's like a tripod, like what's on your camera, you know? If any one of those legs is rickety, the whole thing will fall over.
Correct.
So there's a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of freedom. And that was a revelation as far as writing music. It really gave us the impetus to be a little bit more exploratory in some places too. So, you know, we were still the revved up AC/DC Montrose type, Judas Priest type, but we had our own little thing. And by the time it got to doing, you know, the first single, we were well on the way to getting our own thing together.
And if you were to describe your own style, what would you say it is like?
That's difficult. I guess you'd call it Raven music. Because we are pretty much unlike a lot of other bands. We kind of have our own thing. Love it or hate it, it's us. We got it.
Then come the 80s, and you become a recording artist. How is it that you came across the record deal?
We were playing a little club in Newcastle called Bambora's, and the manager of the Tigers of Pantang, Tom Noble, and the band came to see us, and they liked the show. Oh, not my leg! No, please, don't cut my leg off! Saw the show and said, how would you like to do a single? Because they'd just done a single for the Tigers of Pantang on Neat Records, which was a little, you know, it was a project studio outside of the city with, and they just had a label and they started doing hard rock stuff.
Before you knew it, you had your first album out.
Well, it took a little longer than
Yeah.
that because we were humming and hawing about putting it out on this label because the guy who ran it was the cheapest guy in the world.
Like most of them were at that time.
Oh my God, he squeaked when he walked, let me tell you. But we put out the first album in 1981.
Can you maybe show it and say a few things about it?
I can do that. There it is. Boom, 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 boom. Right there. This is the version that they put out trying to squeeze an extra few dimes out of us. We didn't give them any photos or anything. But as you can see, the cover that was in our old rehearsal room, and the photographer was a wedding photographer who his jaw hit the floor when he walked in. But when we told him what we wanted to do, he got into it and he had a good time. But the album was done over a period of months on odd days, and you know, whenever we could squeeze time in. And it's pretty unique. It has all this talking in between the tracks which we left in, and it just has a real live feel. That's kind of something that's kind of stuck with us through the years.
And even the cover, I mean, it showed a lot of insanity already. That
That was the
to follow.
idea. We wanted to put across, and it's, some kid singing this was like, well, this has got to be worth checking out, hasn't it? We smashed guitars and drums
and many did
buried in it. And very cool.
Then comes Wipeout.
Wiped Out.
Yep.
I need to get it fixed.
Well, the producers on this, Steve Thompson and Mickey Sweeney, really helped point us in the right direction. We learned a lot from them. And then they got a new guy in the studio. It was his first production, and we ended up taking over on it at some point. And this was a crazy album. We wanted to go harder and faster than anyone ever had, and we kind of succeeded. But the whole album and the extra tracks, which I believe are on here from the Crash Bang Wallop EP, was all recorded and mixed in like 6 or 7 days.
Was that the record that was pretty much noticed by the wider audience at that time?
Well, it polarized. I mean, a lot of the English press put their nose up and go, oh, this is too crazy. But in Europe, they loved it. Mm-hmm. They loved it a lot. And, it was just one more step forward. This is where we were. There's a lot of progressive tendencies on this record, but there's some great rock and roll as well. And I just remember it being a really intense, lot of fun doing the record. Yeah.
Okay. Then came All for One.
Then came All for One.
In many ways, that one is regarded very highly.
Yeah, well, after we'd done this one, we went and did a session for Radio 1 down in London at a real studio. And we're like, wow, this is where we've got to go for the next record. We need to do a real album with a real producer and a real studio. And we liked the Accept album Breaker. So we said, hey, let's get the guy who done that. And it turned out to be Michael Wagner. And he was working in partnership with Udo Dirkschneider from Accept. And brought them on board. We did pre-production. We went down to London to a real studio. And it was about 16, 18 days, solid work. But Michael brought the best out of us. He helped us, he did a real production job, helped us with the arrangements. We picked some really good songs and had a great time doing it. And the sound still holds up to date. So, we kind of consciously slowed up a little bit and went for power rather than frenetic energy, kind of more harnessed. And it paid off,
And that was also the time you made it across the Atlantic.
Yeah,
I believe.
Well, actually, before this was on, we did go over for the first time in November 1982. Mm-hmm. We did that. We played like 4 or 5 shows. We did a show in Staten Island with Anvil and Riot, and then we did a few more with Anvil. And then we came back in '83 after doing this one.
And that was a much bigger tour this time.
Yeah, well, we wanted a good band opening, and we were told, check these guys out. And I was given a cassette called No Life to Leather. It kind of sounded like Motorhead at 78 on the record player. Mm-hmm. We went, oh, these guys are cool. So we took Metallica, it was their first tour, we took them out as opening act on the Kill 'Em All for One tour. Mm-hmm. Which was crazy. I mean, 17 people in a 6-berth bus going nuts across America. And I think that was very inspirational for a lot of American kids who ended up starting their own bands after that.
Cool. The live intensity of the band was finally captured on a live record.
Yeah, which was, we toured the year after. We actually took Anthrax out on the road, and that was their first tour. And this is recorded from a few different places, but it captures what we really needed. Was we were breaking away from neat records. We knew there was going to be legalities, and we knew they would try to do a best of album, so we beat them to it. We said we'd do a live album.
How would you describe the band's chemistry in those early days?
It was very much all for one, one for all. I mean, every one of us contributed writing and lyrics and ideas, and was like very much a group mind type of thing. We were all thinking in the right direction, even though we all had little, differences. But a lot of it was unspoken, which was really interesting. Just like, this is cool, let's go this way.
Now, out of that tour and the records that you released, major labels came on knocking.
Yeah, we ended up doing a show in New York with headlines, and there was Metallica and Anthrax at the Roseland Ballroom, which is actually that shot right there. That's the tail end. As you can see, some guys ripping my shirt off, which eventually disappeared. And from that show, all 3 bands got signed to major label deals. So, and as they say, be careful what you ask for, because
that's right.
You get it.
And that Stay Hard was the first album you did on Major.
Yeah. Well, we were recording an album.
Mm-hmm. Regardless.
At one point, it was like, well, maybe we need to record an album to get off Neat Records. What have we got lying around? And we were some songs we were keeping to one side. And then when we had interest from Atlantic, we said, well, let's bring those songs back in. The songs like Extract the Action and stuff like that. So we brought them in and did it with our sound engineer, and the mix wasn't quite right, so we brought in Michael Wagner to mix it, and we re-recorded a couple of songs. The record company asked for Hard Raid, which was a silly idea, but we redid it anyway, and we redid On, and it came out much better. And so it's got commercial aspects to it, but it's not a particularly commercial album for us.
Now, speaking of that, a lot of bands who signed to majors back then faced a lot of pressure from the labels to be more commercial, to be more radio friendly. How would you say that worked out for Raven?
Well, yeah, we got pressure to be more commercial on the next record. That absolutely happened with, like you say, many bands. We just happened to be the poster boys and got a lot of shit for it, as it were. We did an album called The Pack Is Back, exemplified by its horrible cover. The idea was we'd look like us, but be like crazed football players. We look more like crazed hairdressers. What are you gonna do? The album was done with Eddie Kramer, who's famous for Hendrix and Kiss and whatever else. His forte was recording a live band, and we're a live band. But our drummer decided he wanted to record it with click track without anybody else playing, which is strange. And he played behind the beat anyway, so everything has a leaden feel. It's like plodding. And Eddie, we tried to make a high-tech heavy metal album. And it's funny, we got a guitar synthesizer and half the sounds sounded exactly like the ones that were on the Judas Priest album Turbo at the same time. We're just trying to push the envelope with that. There's some okay songs on there, but there's some that are just like, I'm not happy with them. Basically, we were led up the garden path that was like, well, if you do this and if you do that, we'll be able to get you on this tour, this. It was kind of a deal with the devil, and it never worked out.
So it never really paid off?
No, we just said, this is ridiculous. I'd rather do what we love and have it stand or fall on its own merit. So,
do you think it affected your following?
Oh, undoubtedly, but there again, it's like, if you're going to write a band off on one album, that's kind of ridiculous. But here we are, we're still here now. So.
It didn't stop there. Life's a bitch.
We did, Life's a Bitch.
That was a very appropriate title.
Yeah, well, we weren't getting much support from the record label. We were pissed off at them. So we went in, did a very hard album. That's when it first came up that we knew that Rob would be with the band very much longer. Even though he does a great performance on this record, he plays some wonderful drums on it and contributed a couple of really good songs to it. One of my favourites, a really good album, we play well on it, good sound. We did it in the same studio as The Pack Is Back, but big difference. And we went out and toured with Wasp and Slayer. And at the end of that tour, basically, our drummer quit. So it's like, what do we do now?
Okay, but it didn't stop there. You found a new drummer who was?
Mr. Joseph Hasselvander,
Yes.
the doctor of medical nightmares.
And
He was a friend of ours who was in a band called Savoy Brown for a while, and also in Pentagram. And he was a friend, and we tried a few people out, it didn't work, and Mark said, well, what about Joe? And we were like, oh, okay. And it fit perfectly, and Joe plays guitar, writes, so it was brilliant, it worked out really well. And we went upstate New York to a little studio and did the Nothing Exceeds Like Excess album, which was a little bit of a return to a little bit of the Wiped Out type of feel, you know, frenetic, crazy, but balanced with some different stuff. Like Die for Allah was a bit more technical, Into the Jaws of Death, very heavy. So another favourite album.
And at that time we were with Combat Records, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So what happened with Atlantic? How did they kind of split?
We came to a mutual agreement. Basically, they wanted us to do another album, and the amount of money was like really bad, and we just said, nah, let's just. Why would we do a record for you if you're not interested in working with us?
Okay.
So, you know, people say we were dropped, but it was really just a mutual agreement.
With this album, Nothing Exceeds Like Excess, you took a little bit more of an underground track to promote it. Did you kind of see the results back, like the fan base reconvening?
A little. There was still, you know, some of the critics who were bitching. No, they think they can be heavy now, but remember when they weren't, or whatever. We didn't care. We went over to Europe and opened for a band called Creator, who were big fans of the band, and it was a really good opportunity for us. And we did a really big European tour with those guys, and then ended up working with their management, because, you know, things had turned all grunge and whatever in the United States. So we basically changed focus to Europe.
And then there were a bunch of records that came out in Europe only. Now they're finally seeing the light of day here, but you guys never stopped. Architect of Fear.
Which we just decided we want to do a really heavy album with good sound, which got better sound than the previous album. And we did it in Germany, and it really reflected the character of the record. Some great songs on this one. We had a lot of fun with this. It's a little studio in the north of Germany, and kicked it out in about 2.5 weeks. Had a great time doing this. Basically produced it ourselves with the assistance of the engineers. And it was a big step for us. We had a lot of fun with this. And after this one, we went on tour with a band called Running Wild, who were very popular in Europe. And that was a great tour. We had a good time with them.
Glow.
Well, after that, the whole thing in Europe started getting tough with grunge and whatever, and we started working on another record, and got interest from Japan. So we did the Glow record, which was a bit more diverse. You know, there's actually a ballad and a half on this one, which we'd never done before. We just did it because we'd never done it before. We tried. Great sound. Did it in a studio in Dover, New Jersey, which was notable because at the back of the studio recording room there was a big door, and when you went through the door, you came into a janitor's closet with another door, and when you opened that door, you walked into a strip club.
Wow.
So needless to say, nobody was in the studio when they were supposed to be, you know.
Well, with so much temptation around the corner.
What do you think, Mark? I'm there off the fucking studio again, once again. So this was our introduction to playing Japan for the first time, which was pretty amazing. You know? Are you winning?
Take a break for 1 minute.
Yeah.
And we are back.
And we're back.
And
So we did the Glow record, and we got the opportunity to go to Japan for the first time, which was amazing. And this album here is a faithful document of what went on at the time. which was, as you can see, all kinds of nice fun things here. Squirting water at people and all that good stuff. Of course, you get to do a live record and your singer's got laryngitis. That's a lot of fun. But somehow I got away with it. We were like, oh well, maybe we'll overdub the vocals later. But when I went to the studio, my voice had gone completely. So like, well, this is what it is.
Hey.
Take it or leave it. Then, you know. But it's got some great music on it. That was interesting playing Japan back then, because we're like, is anybody even here? Because it was silent. We went through the curtains, opened the curtains, and the place was absolutely packed. And it was just silent. And when the lights went down, then they went crazy. But we found out the next time we came, they just went crazy from start to finish. That kind of like,
Well, it's
they
kind
got the idea.
of difficult not to when you guys come out with so much energy on stage. That's got to spill over.
They were from the get-go, and then they wouldn't leave the hall, which was amazing too. So yeah, it's turning out every time we go to Japan, we end up playing like 2-hour sets and stuff, which is nuts.
Yep.
So the energy that's on this live album, we wanted to let's
Capture it.
capture that. And this album was interesting in that we had the same Japanese label, and we basically had for whatever reason, we had a reduced amount of recording time, and a lot of this was done on the fly, but that captures the energy too. So certain songs were like, half written, all right, how are we going to finish this off, and we jam it out and record it right there and then. And some of my favourite songs are on this one, and it's a pet project at some point to remix it, to give it a little bit more of its due. But a song on here called Wilderness of Broken Glass I love, and then Blind Eye was a great opener. So we did this, and we toured Europe with Tank and Hammerfall as opening bands. It was Hammerfall's first tour. That was awesome, such a good package. And everyone got on, and we were on a tour bus in Europe in the middle of the summer with no air conditioning, so it smelled like death.
Now, at that time, there was a little bit of a heavy metal revival after the years of grunge and whatever else. And the next album actually brings you back to the States. I think that came out on what, Metal Blade, I believe?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember actually interviewing you over the phone for this one for Pit Magazine back then.
Yeah, it was like a bit of a return of people turning back to metal a little bit in the States and what have you. This was like 2000, I believe. We went down and worked with our old friend Michael Wagner.
That's right.
Again, which was
whose name reappears again and again.
Such a good guy, such a lot of fun we had. He has a wonderful studio down in Nashville. So we went country, y'all, down Nashville. It was excellent, I'm telling you. And this has some, again, pushing boundaries, a little bit interesting stuff. A song called Last Raid, it's really dark. And then you've got songs like Top of the World, which are a bit more commercial. A real, sledgehammer to the face type of song, like Seven Shades, right out of the bat with that. And this came out really nicely. We had a good time with this. And we did some touring with Udo, with the UDO band, our old friend from Accept. And we did Europe with him in the winter, which was cold as shit over there, but it was the people were into it. We did great. And following that, a few months later, they came and played the United States, and we played like 4 or 5 shows with them then.
Do you think the US fans caught up again to what you were doing?
A little bit, yeah. It's incremental, every time it catches things up. We were discussing that before, of course, and there's a tendency in America to things to be like, today, gone later today, where in Europe there's more of a sensibility of a tradition and,
Lifelong fan base.
Yeah, really. I mean, there's people like that in the States too, but it's just like the overwhelming impression comes off like that. So we're all good with this.
And then you follow with like a compilation raw tracks album, which again was a really cool thing.
What had come up was a record company got in touch and said, hey, we really want to do a box set. So okay. So, you know, they got the rights to the Atlantic stuff, they were going to get the rights to the other stuff. We do like a real career retrospective, live tracks, bootlegs, unreleased. And all of a sudden the phone went dead and they wouldn't talk to me, and I just called them up and got all my material back off them. They went out of business basically, what it on. So I said, well, you know what? Why don't we do the box set without the stuff everybody's already got? Everyone can get the other stuff. Let's do all the bootlegs and the unreleased tracks and the demos, and we put them on this. So it's got an interesting mix of songs. It's got some live stuff from a radio broadcast in Holland. It's got an alternate version from a demo of the song Nightmare Ride, which ended up on the Packers Back. It's got some live songs from a concert on the radio in Detroit in '85, which is great. Songs from a movie we did, where we did the music for a movie.
Soundtrack.
Soundtrack. It was a song, a movie called Hot Moves, like one of those teenage
Oh yeah.
nonsense movies, but that was a fun experience. Some live tracks from various bootlegs around America and Vienna, I believe in England. One of the first things we did with Joe was a cover of the song Move Over, which is a Janis Joplin song, but you know, we heard it via Slade, so we did that. Some live stuff from that tour with Running Wild. A couple of other things on here, a live track that wasn't used on the Japanese album, and live version from the tour for Packers Back of Youngblood. So great collectors for the fans, you know.
Yes.
And then brother had a house fall on him and
That's
then
right.
died. So we were sidelined for about 5 years, pretty much. It took him about three and a half years just to learn how to walk. And we went out on the road and did a short tour with him in a wheelchair, which was tough. But just happy to have him out there doing it, you know. But he showed great fortitude and stubbornness and resolve, and got back on his feet and was wearing a leg brace, a huge one, then got smaller, then he would strap his legs up. So by 2005, 2006 we were playing festivals, which was fun, getting back into that. Yeah, that's right, it comes to this.
Yep.
We got in touch with an engineer called Kevin 131 who had a studio in Vienna, Virginia near me. I loved what he was doing. Brought the guys in, we did a demo. We demoed Against the Grain, Breaking You Down, and what was the bonus track? There was a bonus track that's not on this, was on the Japanese one. Necessary Evil. And it sounded great. And we had label interest, we had to start all over again to get label interest. We got Metal Blade. We wanted SPV for Europe, and they were doing a reorganization after a bankruptcy and had to get that together. So it took a bit of time. So we waited until that was together. Then we got the money and recorded the rest of the record. And it came out in Europe in 2009, in the States 2010. And this was a very big album for us. Walk Through Fire, because Mark's problems, our parents died, Joe's mother died, there was a lot of trials and tribulations, but it came out in this album.
Yeah, it was a very strong effort, and I think if anybody had doubts about Raven, this was the album to listen to.
So yeah, these guys, this was like, hey, we're here.
Yeah.
The songwriting was very good on this. The sounds were awesome, and it was a huge step in the right direction.
Great songs. I mean, great flowing album all the way through.
And we got to do so much live work that it actually took a while to get to the next album. We did festivals in Europe. We went to South America for the first
US
time.
tour.
US tour. We got to play. I'm trying to think. We went to Japan again in 2009 for this, and so when we finally said, you know, we better do another record here before we forget about doing it. So
And you did that one.
we got Kevin 131 again. Went to Vienna, and we took a different approach on this. We took a lot longer in the writing and the pre-production. Because rather than just saying, hey, I've got a few riffs, and I've got a few riffs, da 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 da, boom, boom, we put it together and sit on it and then come back and go, okay, what could be better? Is this bit good? Does this bit need being here? Or can we come up with a better part? How about a great intro? How about a better ending? I don't like this lyric. What about this? You know, really detailed, pulling into bits and building it up. This is the first record we did crowdfunding as part of the budget as well, because we spent so much money on the pre-production we almost had to. But this was a big step from that last one. The songs are better, the sounds are better.
It's a natural
the
follow-up.
attitude's there, so it's the next step naturally off that album. And again, big European tour, big United States tour. Went to Korea for the first time. Went back to Japan. Had a large amount to back to South America as well. It set us up to where do we go from here? Well, we're working on it. We have like 20 to 25 songs already written, which are the great ones. There's plenty of others. And we've got the enviable position of having difficulty in choosing which songs are going to go on the next record. That's great. Good place to be.
Based on how strong the last two albums were, I think the next one should be called Stronger Than Ever.
It might, we don't know, it might be called Eviscerator. We'll see. That's one of the songs, the Eviscerator. But again, we're just taking what we learned in the pre-production part of this to cut it quick. What works? What's going to be, you know, anything that's extraneous or a little waffly, chop it out and go for the throat, you know.
One thing which strikes me about Raven is perseverance. I mean, you guys went through crappy labels, major labels, styles changing on you, personal traumas, personal accidents, yet you're still here in 2017. What keeps you going?
I mean, an example of that was Monday. Today is Thursday. Monday, our drummer had a heart attack. So, and we have all these dates booked, so what are you going to do? Luckily, Joe's doing all right. He's, you know, he had heart surgery, had a stint to put in, but he's, you know, his future as far as a drummer is up in the air, and it's not even something I want to think about right now. He needs to rest, he needs to recuperate, and of course we wish him, you know, all the best, and we'll be, you know, keeping in touch and seeing how that's going. So these days here, we've got Jimmy here, a local lad from Chicago's filling in tonight. We've got a guy from Jersey who's actually Mike Heller, who's playing with Fear Factory, who's going to fill in for us. And a cast of different drummers is going to have to help us out until we get through this festival season. And we got a European tour, we got an American tour, we've got a lot of stuff coming up. So.
Well, knowing you guys, I know you're going to make
it. We will rise to the challenge and do the best we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone out there. You still owe me $50.